Hello and welcome to Morgan Latif Presents. I'm Oliver Morgan, co-founder and director of Morgan Latif and your host, and today I'm joined by Nick Racster to talk about making transformation successful. Nick is an experienced manufacturing and supply chain leader, having led single factories, groups of factories and global supply chain, especially through change or to a higher level. In total, Nick's seen over 50 transformations, both in corporate and private equity environments, and has a passion for leading and driving performance. In this podcast, we start off by discussing what is transformation. We talk initially about cost reduction and then move on to discuss large-scale cultural change. Overall, we discuss how well do transformations actually work, and then the obvious question, which is how to succeed and what to focus on. We hope you enjoy. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
So we're talking about transformation. If we could start at the beginning, what is transformation?
So transformation means actually different things to different people. There are different types. So there is transformation for cost reduction. And people refer to cost reduction as transformation. There is functional transformation or re-engineering. There is strategy implementation. And then there is a culture change. So through those four, I've built up a level of complexity in the transformation. At its greatest, transformation is about creation. It's about renewal. It's whole system change. Creating something new, and that contrasts really sharply with it not being about fixing things. It's much more about the creation and the renewal and the whole system change. The vision for transformation, the ambition, the need to transform tends to be driven by external factors and by compelling need. A good test, I always think, if what you're doing is really transformation, is are you having to change the KPIs and the system of management? If you're having to do that, you're probably doing transformation. And transformation it actually has a lot in common with continuous improvement. But I would describe continuous improvement as it's not about whole system change. It's about incremental improvement. It's over a longer period of time. It doesn't actually need to be less ambitious. You can set ambitious goals for continuous improvement. And you can, in many cases, you can actually get to the same place as transformation, but over a much longer period, over a much longer period of time. So there's a lot in common there, but if your continuous improvement program is not ambitious and time has run out, and we have a compelling economic or technological need to transform, then that's the route we'll need to take, as opposed to continuous improvement. Understood.
It sounds like these are super ambitious transformations at this scale. How well do they go, and what are the main challenges?
Yeah, so I mean, batting averages are not so good. So there's research available from McKinsey, for example, that is showing us that almost 70% of transformations either fail completely or miss their goal by a lot. So significant failures, and say up to 80%. I think this is not really not well talked about. But I think it's no surprise that the failure rate is so high, because transformation is it's very complicated. A lot of people are involved, and the outcomes desired very quickly. Therefore they are high risk. And also, I think about it through my career. If I think about the number of organizations I've seen, the number of factories I've looked at, for example, I've probably been in over 1,000 factories. And how often have I seen effective continuous improvement in these organizations? You say, well, less than 10% of the time, maybe less than 5% of the time. So if you have continuous improvement working, then at least you have an organization that has some level of change readiness. So therefore, if we just say 90% of organizations don't have any kind of meaningful long-term continuous improvement program that's stuck, that has discipline behind it. If we then apply transformation to an organization like that, it's a little bit like as the sort of the coalition and center expands to a larger and larger number of employees. It's like as an aircraft comes into land, the wheel at the front is initially not turning, and it hits the runway and then suddenly turns very rapidly. If you apply transformation to an organization that has no change readiness, no foundation in continuous improvement, then it's really a very big change for that organization. And culture change, we do usually like to put culture change at the heart of transformation programs. It's absolutely essential. So there's various insights you can go through that kind of clarify why it's so difficult, why that's often more to do with the people and the leadership than any technical factor. So breaking transformations down then. So if we talk about cost reductions particularly, then the success rate is better. So you can talk about in the range sort of 60 to 80%. Thinking about sort of functional transformations and process reengineering transformations, it's a little lower. So 50%, 40, 60% in that range. When we talk about strategy implementation, then there are small changes in strategy, and then there are large changes in strategy. But the range now is now lower. We're talking, sort of 30%, 30 to 50% for strategy execution programs, and then the benefit, the culture change, would combined with a major strategy implementation. Those have the lower success rate, down at the sort of 20%, 25%. 20 to 30% in that range.
So it just shows then, if you don't have a continuous improvement program already, then start one, because if you don't, it can often lead to the need for large scale transformation, and it's even then harder to implement one when you start. So get on that.
Great foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an obvious question then, is how do people succeed? What should leaders focus on to be successful?
Yeah, so there are really many answers to that, and depends on many factors, and the type and ambition of the transformation, and as we discussed, the change readiness. I think normally, it's not so much about the technical side of it, right? So there's lots of clever, well-educated, structured thinkers out there with really great consulting and industry experience. We can define a transformation well. We can define a transformation plan, value creation plan. We can define work streams and balance resources and prioritize and align. And these sort of technical aspects are quite straightforward, but I think it's more the people change, the culture change, and the leadership, and how the definition of the transformation program comes about. But all of those things that make the biggest difference. So a couple of examples. So how compelling is the need, and how is that felt in the organization? So as an example, I've worked with a CEO previously who, to support me, he deliberately piled on, almost saved up some bad news, bad performance. It was coming anyway, but deliberately saved it up to issue it all at once, all in one go,
right.
To create that kind of gasp of a moment in the workforce. Deliberately kind of exaggerated that, and the effect of that is to align the domains in the magnet. The organization's the magnet. We want the domains all aligned in the same way. And organizations are constantly announcing new programs and new changes. So you've got to do something additional for a fundamental transformation program to stand out from the noise. In terms of kind of need, I have been in a situation where I was delivering a big change program, and there was no burning platform. I mean, the organisation had margins at 50% already. People didn't really feel the need to transform. Now we still won with that, but I want to say that was much harder work. So yeah, compelling need really, really important. Another area really important is the vision. That the vision be breakthrough, that it be ambitious, right? That it be upper quartile in terms of where the company is going to get to against its competitors, because everybody's improving. Your competitors are all improving as well, even if they haven't publicly announced a transformation program. Everybody's improving. So if it's going to take a couple of years to get there, will it really be where you think when you complete? The vision needs to be simple, and I think the blind spot around having a breakthrough vision is the way it's perceived, or your awareness of being in your perception of, in your employees' perception of how they see the vision. So just an example to bring this to life. So it's well known that Henry Ford invented the black Model T. When he was first showing it to people, what would you like this? What would you like? People would say, well, we'd like a horse that is 3 miles per hour faster, that lives 5 years longer, that eats less. We need to muck out less as well. We'd like an improvement like this. They don't think so much about the transformational impact that could be had with a range of factors like that technology brings. And another more recent example would be Elon Musk with his Tesla Roadster. I mean, he's quite famous for having described that when he started talking to buyers about the Roadster in the early weeks and months. I mean, the feedback he got was, "No, we don't want an electric sports car. Neither want an electric sports car, and I don't want to test drive it." I mean, that was his experience. So from the leadership group's profound vision and how they think about that, their understanding of that is likely to be held by a large proportion of the workforce, and that gap can really kind of can lead one to think that the organisations are coming with them when perhaps they're not. So it's really something to think about how you communicate, how you really get that vision across, and make it real for people. Another one I think is about going all in. I think a leader can't delegate the transformation entirely. Whether it's the CEO who's living the transformation, or it's a head of a business unit that wants a transformation. The leader needs to get involved, and not full time, right? But they've got to be involved. Improvement is all about leadership and driven by the leader. So you can't delegate it. Another factor of going all in is about prioritization. Obviously, we all know the importance of prioritizing, but I can think of situations where I was really pleasantly surprised that having designed and proposed a transformation program to a board, the board accepted it and canned 15 other programs. There were, I think, one particular case where they actually canned 15 other programs to do the transformation program that I had proposed. And also that helps you to feel that they've understood some of the challenges that lie ahead. It's really important that does happen, because if your program just becomes one of many, then it's not going to get the leadership focus that it needs. Another good example would be the need to collaborate from day one. So not to work in too small a group, not to define in isolation. Now, I've got actually a really good example of this. So two extremes. I've initiated transformations over. I mean, the longest one was kicked off over the period of a year, a whole year of build-up, of defining. We defined first, for example, a production system, and then pilots, and then we built up to a very large change program, which was then launched globally. I can think of transformation programs I've launched, smaller ones, where I've launched them in effectively in a morning, with 60 people in a room, and very little preparation, and not much more than a flip chart. And you truly lead. You take the flip chart, you take people through that. This is the situation, right? These are some negative factors that are affecting us. So we want to win with this. We want to win together. So you build that up into setting and agreeing a goal. You really fire people up. So there are different ways of getting to this, and different approaches, suitable for different situations. But collaboration, doing things together, defining the program together, plan together, deciding the prioritization openly together, the resourcing, that collaboration, and building that collaboration out over time to form a growing coalition is a really important factor in success. Another small one is, for example, just communicating the strategy. I've been a part of so many companies who keep the strategy almost secret. I think of one where it was a closely guarded secret, and only a few people around the CEO knew the strategy. Now, perhaps in that example, there was reasons for the strategy to remain less well communicated, but sharing the strategy and communicating it actively, many CEOs do that, but ensuring the strategy is well communicated does help bring people along on the journey.
I guess otherwise people feel like they're going on a hamster wheel and they're working really, really hard, but ultimately they don't know what direction they're going in because it's not being communicated. They don't know what the strategy is. Yeah,
directionless. Yeah, absolutely. I think another really important leadership theme is bringing people back together regularly. Once you've launched, the launch being one-off is not ideal. So, I mean, I'm always trying to bring people back together at least every 2 or 3 months. It's quite like S&OP in supply chain. We conscious decision. We're going to realign resources, review decisions every month. You need the same in a transformation program. Bring people back together and look at progress, look at priorities, look at alignment, etc., and take a decision. I think that realignment is also very, very, very important. Often, where people haven't, many situations I've seen where people haven't got the value, can link back to not having revised the operating model and the organisation and the system of management. So that's also a very important area to follow through. And you can't live with the old if you've made big change.
Some really, really good tips there. That's a really comprehensive answer. So thank you very much for that. The approach that you've discussed, in your experience, would that differ between cultures or industries?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, particularly between cultures. Mm-hmm. And I think cultures differ. In different cultures, different languages, different things are defined. What is polite, what is impolite, differs quite significantly between cultures. How you give and receive feedback can differ enormously between cultures and organisations, particularly cultures. I'm thinking of you talk about feedback. Someone like China. I mean, it's almost opposite to how we do things in the West. So yeah, because of those fundamental differences, you do have to allow for these when working in different cultures. So
yeah, I can.
Short answers, yes, very, very much so.
I can imagine. Just thinking about it, actually, a lot of my experiences, like in the Nordics, for example, it's quite a consensus-based culture. and in other countries, for example, the American or even the British, I think you can be a lot more direct. But do you think culture would slow transformation down in some respects?
Culture, as in the pace that an organization can go at, can transform at, is affected by many different factors. Actually, the biggest of which is change readiness, right? So if we have no recent history of change, if the current workforce haven't experienced change in recent times, then as I said earlier, it's going to be more of a shock than an organization that has either been through other types of change recently or in recent memory. I mean, that's a big factor. My own experience, I have delivered transformations in really quite substantial changes in the process and the way people work, massive ones actually, in public sector, and also transformations in underperforming private sector and highly performing private sector as well. And I don't really detect that the culture slowed it down. If you win hearts and minds, my experience is if you win hearts and minds, you can make strong progress. But if you skip steps in winning hearts and minds, then I think you can stumble.
Yeah, I can imagine. It seems like a lot of what we're discussing for the success, especially around communication, being present, must be difficult during current state. I mean, COVID-19, it's made travel a lot more difficult. How would you cope with that as a leader? The transformation can't stop.
Yeah, so it has continued. Organizations are doing transformations right now, despite travel limitations. They continued all the way through. You can do it remotely, of course you can, but clearly you can't have the same engagement or closeness of interaction. Can you really get under the skin of something remotely? So you can continue, but I don't see how it can be as effective. You need some contact time. You can bring people together in a Zoom meeting using you can use rooms, so you can move forward. But if we were, for example, to continue to do that for years and not come back to how we used to do transformation, bringing people together in workshops and so on, I mean, it's got to be riskier. It's likely to be more error prone than being able to actually get together face to face.
Yeah, for sure.
And engage closely.
I read somewhere that, and I wish I could reference it, but you have a relationship reservoir, and you have this relationship built up, and it can take so much in a transformation. It can take so much distance and not being there, but being face to face rebuilds that connection. So I can imagine if the transformation and the relationship's already there, then it might be a little bit easier to connect via Zoom because that trust is built up. But if you've never met an individual, or if you're new coming into an organization, you don't have that connection. I can imagine it's a lot more difficult remotely.
Yes, a really important word you used there was trust. So I think that you can build trust remotely through remote working, even just through working through Zoom and phone calls. You can build trust that way, but I think it takes longer.
Yeah.
But then if something, transformation is imperfect. Even very good people can make mistakes on transformation programs, and actually just recognize them and reverse them as quietly and as quickly as possible. But if you do something that something happens that causes an issue with trust, I think it's easier and sincerer to repair it face to face. And it would be, by a Zoom meeting or a phone call. There's definitely something about face to face.
I think what you mentioned is really important there from a leadership perspective, actually, and trust, communication. These are hugely important factors, and will make people follow you. And like you said, people do make mistakes, and I think being open and honest where possible about that will probably even strengthen the trust relationship between the team members. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. Really interesting discussion on transformation. Are there any key takeaways that you want to leave us with, or the main things to remember from this discussion?
Well, collaborate. Engage. I think make everything visible, simple, over communicate, regular alignment, and call time on past assumptions that are no longer valid.
Fantastic. Yeah, don't forget the people element involved is absolutely key. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.